Hey guys, this is Jamie. So let's have a moment of appreciation for my beautiful face today, which I did with makeup. Thank you. Anyway, let's move on to today's topic. So I wanted to start today by saying that I read this comment about a few weeks ago, and I let it marinate in my head so I could properly discuss it later with you guys on a video, really. So the comments was as follows. It was pretty much a call out for the fact that straight trans guys have it much harder when it comes to passing. For instance, if a straight trans guy wants to do makeup post transition or during transition or in general sort of wants to dabble into the world of makeup, he will be seen sort of like, are you trans enough? Are you manly enough? And etc. And there are obviously certain codes, and we have to admit that, for instance, um, I guess, as some people do not want to admit, that certain sort of expectations are put upon us when it comes to our sexualities as well. In general, when we talk about people, people do enjoy to put boxes. And boxes seem to be something that we are drawn to, we want explanations for them, and so on. So obviously, this got me thinking that indeed, like, straight trans guys are supposed to wear certain things, I don't know, cargo pants, um, act a certain manner. Well, when it comes to gay trans guys, we have it a bit more lax. And even though I want to argue that my experience hasn't always been like about being lax, because right now specifically we're many years into my transition and the only operation I have left is fallow. I still find it very difficult sometimes with my relatives, with my friends who are like, yeah, but if you're a guy, why are you wearing makeup, Jamie? And it is something that people have had to sort of process and etc. And in general, I feel like when it comes to trans people, there's a lot of assumptions. Like, for some reason, it's very common to think that trans guys are mostly attracted to women. And sure, I've had my experimentations in the past, but it's something I am really not comfortable with, I'd even say, because I feel like people assume that because I'm a trans guy, I should be attracted to women, and that is necessarily not the case. And it's really interesting because everyone kind of always assumes that I'm either bi or pan, or I'm very open to uh, like trans femme partners or etc. And that is often, or that is factually not the case. So it even happens to me in hookups where I go hook up with a certain person and then they tell me they're non-binary, or they tell me a bit beforehand, and I have to, like, already when I'm in the car, or when things are going on, I have to understand that, well, what can I say? I'm already in the car. I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna sleep with you while we're in the car. And I should say such things, but I don't, because I choose my safety, and at the same time, I feel like it's a boundary I need to overcome, and up to the point that I've even started putting my Grindr profile that I'm just gay and I'm not interested in anyone else other than men. I do understand that sexuality is a very, very complicated subject, but it's gone a bit way too much when it comes to certain aspects, and I'm digressing. I'm really sorry. What I wanted to say was a lot of these expectations sort of get slapped on us. And I don't really, and at the same time, I understand that obviously we're all guilty of it. I've assumed certain things about people. People assume certain things about me. None of us are really purely innocent in this thing. Even when we see a stranger walk down the street, we can assume that their sexuality, their marital status, everything really. So on one hand, I want to say I wish people would stop doing that, but at the same time, when I do such videos, I understand that I give my own criticisms. So it's a very sort of merry-go-round of problematic things. So if we're going back to straight trans guys, in general, I feel like obviously the majority of straight trans guys which I encounter are obviously very into sort of mask identifying. Uh, they do not have interest in certain things, but at the same time, they do not. Many of them do not want to let go of their queerness and identify as queer, even though they've always been attracted to women. And the sexuality, obviously, there's a big sexuality debate, and there was a few weeks ago, and you still can kind of see it to this day, like whether trans men can be lesbians, and obviously the answer is no, but people still want to discuss it. And when it comes to certain people, obviously, we have certain very peculiar scholars like Leslie Feinberg. When we go back into history and we look back at certain things, obviously there was an intertwine between butch lesbians, stone butch, and obviously straight trans men. And because at certain points of time we didn't have the language, and apparently certain things like I feel like a man, I'm living as a man, I identify as a man was not sufficient, even to this day for scholars, we kind of have this mixture. And there was an interesting thing I saw the other day as well, that there's a Joan of Arc play which will have Joan as non-binary, like non-binary, and I was like, well, I always thought of Joan as a trans man, but I was like, okay, it's up to, I guess, the interpretation of the person who did that piece. But at the same time, this is what I'm talking about. For instance, I'm assuming things when I don't know. And at the same time, the other person is assuming, so I'm pissed at them for assuming something that I think is wrong. So this is a sort of a video all around the place. What I'm really trying to say is that we really sort of pigeonhole people and we expect them to be in that pigeonhole which we think society works in. So, for instance, I very often think that there's a lot of binary men who don't understand certain things, and then they don't think that they are binary enough. And at the same time, other people look at me and they're like, well, Jamie, why aren't you non-binary? You came here in a velvety dress. And I just see myself as a man who enjoys frilly things. I mean, if to put like in one style, I am fucking loving whatever the fuck Marc Jacobs is wearing, like even up to those Yeezy slides he wore, like I think it was a post from today. So it's quite interesting, and people do tend to take the fact, like for instance, it's more often people take a cis man who's in makeup and says, "Hey, I'm a guy, I'm a cis guy," and no matter what he's wearing, people will assume that he's a binary guy. But at the same time, this is going back to the first point, that when you're a straight trans guy and for instance you're wearing a bit of makeup or you're wearing, I don't know, a skirt or something, it will be harder for people to understand why are you straight and why are you doing a certain thing which is not expected from a straight trans guy. So in a way, when I read that comments, and the second part of it was that gay trans guys have it easier, and I thought about it, it is indeed. But at the same time, for instance, if I look at my own situation, I can see that a lot of people think that because I'm a trans guy and I'm very sexually active or whatever, they think that I am very attracted to women as well as I am towards men. And that is not the case. And I just feel like it's a very sort of hard subject to even close or like to come to a conclusion, other than the fact that we need to stop assuming things, and we need to listen to people more. But at the same time, if we don't assume certain things that can be a bit chaotic, we can't really show up to every person and say, hey, can you please tell me my pronouns, your sexuality, I don't know, your sexual preferences, etc. Everything isn't a Grindr bio, for fuck's sake. Or a Tinder bio, you know, if that's what you're into. If that's the sort of torture you're into. So yeah, and as humans we tend to sort of categorize everything. So I don't really know, I can't say something like we need to rethink our thinking, because even I do it. But I just wanted to do this video as a food for thought, that indeed it is harder for certain sexualities and for certain presentations to be sort of linked together. Again, like, makeup is still a mostly gay or female woman thing. And I also wanted to point out an interesting thing. So I found it really interesting as well. I always talk about trans guys mostly, but I want to touch really quickly on trans women. And again, please understand, I'm a trans guy, so if anything I say is not valid, or please take this a bit with not a grain of salt, but more like understand that I'm just saying what I'm seeing. I also found it really interesting, like, the more I sort of spend time on Grindr, the more I see, like, for instance, I really enjoy different man in makeup subreddits, such as like male nail polish, and I go there thinking, okay, there's other guys who just do their nails, and then I find out that they're actually, you know, trans women who are closeted, and I'm like, well, if you're a trans woman who's closeted, why are you here, you know? And then that seeps into other things. Like, for instance, there's another subreddit called Male Fashion, and it welcomes everyone who sort of fits into the style of male fashion. But then that's like another filtering thing, like, should you allow everyone or not? But at the same time, the subreddit is called Male Fashion. So everything is sort of like... So what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of examples of where people box it and where people don't box it. What do we do about that? I have no fucking idea, seriously. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I just wish people were less judgmental, people would... On one hand, I'm saying that I don't like the way people label, because I wouldn't label that myself. And at the same time, I understand that we can't just keep on asking everyone for everything. So what is the solution? I don't know. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I hope I gave you something to think about. I'll leave it on this note. If you like this video, please subscribe. If you liked it, please give a thumbs up. Please share. And thank you very much.